13 News Now at 11 begins with the protests taking over college campuses across the country. Thanks for staying up. I'm Dana Smith.
I'm Dan Kennedy. Students are calling on schools to cut ties with Israel over the war in Gaza. In Hampton Roads, 2 different groups gathered for peaceful demonstrations at Christopher Newport University and Newport-News. But it was a much different story at Columbia in New York City, where tonight NYPD officers began forcefully removing protesters who had barricaded themselves inside a building. ABC's Em Nguyen tells us more.
Tonight, New York City police moving in on pro-Palestinian protesters. ABC's Stephanie Ramos is at Columbia.
NYPD officers are making their way. They are clearly clearing these streets. We see students, we see folks that have been out here for the last several hours watching this group disperse and run in the opposite direction. So that SWAT team that is here, you're looking at that truck. They're clearly trying to make their way into the building to get to the student demonstrators that have been held up in this building all day.
The demonstrators had taken over a Columbia University building and refused to abandon their campus encampments. A Palestinian flag attached to a statue of Alexander Hamilton and a protester waving it on the roof.
We should have been a peaceful protest. It has basically been co-opted by professional outside agitators.
Protesters facing not just suspension but expulsion and now police penalties.
For the individuals that are inside of Hamilton Hall, they will be charged with burglary in the 3rd degree, criminal mischief, and trespassing. For the individuals that are in the encampments outside, they will be charged with trespassing and disorderly conduct.
Columbia's Hamilton Hall, built in 1907 and named after the first Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton, has a long history of student protests. In 1968, the first building taken over during Vietnam War protests, almost 1,000 arrests. Now, schools across the U.S. are trying to clear encampments and save graduation ceremonies from being canceled. The wave of demonstrations now at more than 60 college campuses across the U.S., trying to get their school to cut ties with Israel over the war in Gaza. Just as most students face final exams, the demonstrations testing protesters, school administrators, and law enforcement alike. Em Nguyen, ABC News, Washington.